and welcome to our producing workshop for ladies of filmmaking industry. Here at Saddleback College, we are super proud of all the ladies that we have. I am, as a professor here, I can tell you just in a 3-4 year span, actually I can go even back. I was a student here in 6 years ago, and there was maybe 2 females, 2 ladies in our classes. And now, my 101 classes here, my Film 1 classes here, they are full of young, brilliant, talented women, which is awesome to see. So again, hats off to everybody here and everybody watching. Keep pushing, keep becoming one of those top-notch filmmakers, because that's the only way anything ever changes. Is just by keep pushing forward. I tell all of my students that filmmaking is really like it's a it's perseverance of attrition. Perseverance of attrition is the phrase. I think I might have said it to you actually over the summer. The people that end up becoming the top tiers are the ones that stick it out the longest through thick and thin. It is an extremely hard thing to do, and the only way you do it is by persevering. So tonight we'll be doing a workshop about 60 minutes. We'll see how long it actually goes on producing. Basically we'll do workshop style. I'll be presenting, talking. Feel free to ask questions at any point, and we can kind of loop our way back into it and cover basically the 5 stages of production, which, if you haven't heard them before, they're great to look up on your own. They are development, they are pre-production, they are principal photography, post-production, and distribution. And again, we'll be able to look those up later, and I'll put them on. I have slides that I'm actually presenting off behind me just to keep me on track. I can make that available to everybody afterwards too, so you don't have to go crazy with notes. You can more listen and engage.
Of attrition.
But there's another part of that, that I think we're seeing more and more of, and I like to say there is another element of those stages, and it's perpetuity. A few years ago, just literally 2018, before the pandemic, Contagion was literally off the charts. The movie Contagion. Any movie with pandemics, all those kind of movies, nobody was looking those up. Nobody actively looks that stuff up when times are good, right? But it did great. It was an incredible movie back in 2010-ish, 2008 when it came out. So it had fallen off the charts. And all of this producing work was done in somebody's mind. And then out of the blue, we have a pandemic, and what happens to Contagion? All of a sudden it's in the top 5 of every streaming queue. Streaming queues didn't even exist when it came out. It came out on a theatrical release, and maybe it made some money on DVD, and then maybe it made some more money on Blu-ray with some director's cuts, and they pumped it up and sold a few million of those. But then after that, gone for almost a decade. But now this concept of perpetuity, that the producer is the one. How did that contract get written to know where those profits are going? That now that it's on Netflix, now that it's on Hulu, now that it's on all these sources, are there any royalties? Were there back-end deals? All of that stuff would have been done by a producer. So knowing all of that and continuing it basically in perpetuity these days. And we're seeing this in IATSE even in this day when we see our brothers and sisters out there, fighting the fight right now on whether or not there's going to be a strike with IATSE. On top of all of the underlying foundational reasons, just basic living issues, there's also these issues around streaming that weren't really there the last time contracts were negotiated. They're a relatively new thing that's come onto the stage. So that's kind of where perpetuity comes into play. A little bit about me. My name is Angelo Ford. I am a professor here at adjunct faculty, I believe is my current title here at Saddleback. I teach currently. I teach 3 classes currently. There are up till 2 more, so 5 potential different classes I teach here, and then I also teach up at Pasadena City College, another 3 to 6 different courses at any given time. But usually I'm teaching a total of about 6 courses. One of them is always some kind of producing. I love producing. That's where my heart lies. I was a pilot in the Air Force. I flew C-17s in the early 2000s after I got out of business school up at UMass in Massachusetts. And after I got out of the military, I was, really pushing like, what do I want to do with my life? I don't want to fly, I don't want to fly for FedEx. I don't want to fly for airlines. I can't fly, for the military anymore. I was medically discharged. So I was really faced with this. I was 27 years old, faced with this major decision of what to do next. So I went back and I got an MBA. I had a business degree already, so I got an MBA, did more business, and then continued working in corporate jobs. A buddy of mine got some money to make a full-on feature and asked me if I would help out, starting as a military consultant. That transformed into my business knowledge. They didn't have the expertise to do contracts, location agreements, SAG agreements. To me, it was just all business in a different name. The Business of the Biz is one of these books over here, The Biz, which we'll go through these all a little bit later. But as you're going through the producing side of filmmaking, it's really evident that if you have background in business, it's very applicable to what we're doing in filmmaking. So I ate it up. I kind of was like, oh, this was a fun application. I already understand, using spreadsheets and budgets and schedules, but how do I apply those, to a film set? And my buddy was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, basically. I don't have anybody to do this role, so I can't pay you, but you're more than welcome to be our production manager. I ended up being a production manager, unit production manager on a $3.8 million independent feature. And then said, gee, maybe I should go figure out how to do this, legally, properly, the right way. I came here to Saddleback. I met Kiku and I met Hiro. Loved them both. And I said, gee, this is kind of the environment, at least. I don't even know if I want to do this, but that's the environment that I want to be in. And I ate it all up. I took every class I could here. I did all the program all the way through associate, and then moved on to Chapman and got an MFA in film and television producing. I've done about 25, 35 short films, features, commercials, across the gambit. Right now, I am working as line producer on a $25 million budget adaptation of a graphic novel. That I'm kind of bouncing back and forth helping as line producer. So we'll go more on these specific, like what are these different producers, like, where they fit onto a production, and as we're going through. I think my thing locked up on me, so I'll have to walk over there and unlock it. I hope that doesn't keep happening. Oh, look at that, it did it. Sweet, the magic of technology, right? So that takes me where I'm at today. A friend of mine, Professor Hoskins, asked me to come teach one course here. I was working at an electric vehicle company at the time. It was during COVID. I was working from home. They wanted me to come back to work, and I wasn't prepared to go back in the summertime. I didn't have coverage for my kids. My wife is a vice president. She's a working female herself. It's not an expectation that she should just have to deal with that. So we talked about it, and I made the decision to say, I'm not going back to work. I'm going to just focus on teaching and see what happens. That one class is now currently 6 classes that I'm teaching, with more give and take depending on how enrollment goes. So, and I've determined that I love this. I can do this every day, all day. I love teaching. Before even film, I love teaching. I've decided that I love sharing knowledge, bringing other people's happiness to the forefront. That, to me, even more, which my friends are shocked at, than my flying days when I was 21 years old, airdropping in combat missions, getting shot at over Afghanistan. Like, this to me is way more fulfilling as a human being. So, that's who's up here today in front of you. Before I get off that, there's plenty of ways that you can find more about me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then my favorite one that I love connecting with people on is Letterboxd. Letterboxd is like IMDb, but social. You can create your favorite lists of horror movies, animated films, It is such a fun connectivity tool for social application in our little niche, in entertainment. It's called Letterboxd with a D at the end. And my handle or my username, whatever you want to call them these days on that, is Film Professor, all one word. I'm either Film Professor on most things, which you see my ugly mug on, or I'm Film_Professor. I think Instagram and Twitter are the two that I'm underscore. Yeah. And then Letterboxd and TikTok, I'm just, there you go. So that's me. Always safety first. As we're getting kicked off here, I'm going to ask some questions in a second. But the first thing we always want to do as producers we are literally the safety advisor. On set, you have the first AD who's responsible for doing a safety meeting at the beginning of every set call, but it's still our job as the producer to make sure that that's getting done, to make sure we're not filming, in an area that's unsafe with trains or airplanes or things that are happening that are not safe environments that we should know better. That is absolutely, you can look up so many different instances, whether it's a helicopter crash or people getting killed on train tracks. It's an absolute tragedy, and if you don't have permission to shoot somewhere, don't shoot there. Going out and doing guerrilla shooting and trying to steal a shot when it's harmless is one thing, but going out to some place where there's hazards and putting your crew in danger, those are your friends. Mm-hmm. Be safe. Today's world, obviously, COVID is a part of that. Masks. It gives me chills of happiness. I've done 4 projects in COVID. And not once has anybody ever complained about wearing a mask on set. You just do it. It's part of our job. You want to come on set and work, you wear a mask. You follow procedures. We change things. I love how adaptive our environment is. Film is so progressive, crews especially. Even on simple things like COVID. Now instead of putting out a big bowl of popcorn that we're all going to, which we probably should have never done in the first place, right? Yeah. Now there's individual bags of popcorn on the table. These small things, sure, it costs a little bit more, but everybody's safer, people are happier, it's a better production. Mm-hmm. So just carry that through. The idea of carrying through, the other thing that we're super responsible for is, Professor Hoskins likes to call it guardian of the script. That's what he believes a producer should be. Because a lot of times, when a writer writes a story, particularly in the film world, they sell it off, and the producer now owns it. Is something that is in their development queue, and the writer has no say of how that film turns out. So it's the producer who spotted it, or bought it, or licensed it, or optioned it, to understand the intent of that script, the heart of that script. You bought it for a reason to produce it. Make sure that you follow through, and that's the movie that gets made. Sure, there's adaptation. The director puts their fingerprint on it. The production designer puts her fingerprint on it. The sound designer puts her fingerprint on it. The editor puts his finger on it. And we kind of all do this thing. We're painting collaboratively to make a movie, but ultimately, the producer is the one that's the guardian of that script. I do love that phrase. It's so hard to talk with a mask on. So, before we jump forward, I do think, what's the biggest thing that you can, ask for? It's fight for feedback, we used to say in the military. This isn't communication, this is just me talking. Communication is me saying, there's a slew of different positions on film sets. What is it that interests you about producing? Is it the money side of it, the people side, or the logistics side of it? What are you most interested in from producing? Or curious?
That's a good question. Money, you said money?
Yeah, are you interested in
People
being
or
the money, the person? Okay, so let me talk about those
Yeah.
3 things
Yeah.
a little bit real quick first before I ask that. So there's really 3 kind of different realms that producers, in my opinion, head down. One is the money. Do you want to be the type of producer that's in charge in development of raising funds?
Executive, basically.
Executive. It could be an executive,
Okay,
but typically it's the producer.
okay.
Because remember, there's only one, the producer. The producer is the one whose name or production company is on the insurance, is on the liability, is the one getting the money. Mm-hmm. They're usually the producer. Executive producer, I'll go through all of these individually, but an executive producer can be that, but they also can just be doing contracts, getting a location. It's all so convoluted these days. There's no one thing, except for the one. The producer carries the buck, the whole production. She is, the one who's responsible for everything. That's the money. So money is one option. 2 is the people. You're more in the executive line. You're in charge of the deal memos and the contracts and, all the legalities. This one right here, really. This book. The business. The basic business, legal, and financial aspects. That's really executive, right? And then finally, the 3rd major one is the line producer. They're in charge of the people or the supervising producers, that maybe like a post-production supervisor. These are all kind of realms in producing. They're really in charge of the people, the teams, making sure that the work is getting done. A line producer is working with the director, with the producer, with all of the teams to come up with a schedule and a budget, and then executing on that. So those are kind of like the different realms. Have you thought about that?
Nope.
Nope.
Probably people.
People, probably people. So
Well, I
maybe
guess
executive.
line.
Yep.
Well, no. The last one you were talking
Oh,
about.
line, actually
Yeah.
working with the teams. Yeah.
That's
my
if I
favorite.
was gonna pick one.
That's what I've done the most work with. You might hear terms like production manager, unit production manager. It's kind of like the height of the crew. Typically, they're the ones that are physically hiring all of the crews and paying the crews, and they're reporting into a line producer typically. Unit production manager sometimes is the line producer.
Okay.
So that's my favorite personally.
Mm.
Money, people, or like things basically, or logistics.
I like the people too.
People, yeah. It's fun. You kind of see where we're going with this, right? Like, how about you?
Absolutely the people.
Absolutely people?
You know.
Right? So now where do we get the money to make our movie? None of us want to be the one that goes out and does a crowdsourcing or calls up our dentist and says, hey, I've been coming to you every 6 months. You want to make a movie? Which I've got funny dentist stories, by the way. They love to participate in movies.
Do they really? Really?
Long stories, but the short of it is, you get to walk on the red carpet, you get to come to hang out at the film festival, you get to watch your funded thing, and there it is, produced by, so-and-so DDS, like, come to my practice. Like, there's tons of reasons why they love it, but a huge one is the fun factor of being the producer in the room. And this is why, a lot of movies never make money, because these producers have so much control over all of it. It's really interesting how it works. So that's just something to come in mind, and it's not a problem. All that means is you've got to do more of this. You've got to get together in groups, find collaborations, find other classes. You'll be surprised. There's people that are incredibly good at raising money. They like doing Kickstarters. They like standing in front of a camera and doing pitch videos and coming up with new perks to put onto Kickstarter, Seed and Spark, or Indiegogo, whatever the latest crowdsourcing is, or giving percentage points to their friends and family who are like, oh, I want to be a part of a movie, I'll give you $15,000 for 5 points or whatever. Most of the shorts I've funded, all of the money has come from friends, family, and fools is the moniker, because who else, unless you're a friend or family, why would you ever give somebody money to go make a movie? It's very foolish, it's highly unlikely to make money. Which takes me to the point of, why are you doing this in the first place? To me, there's really 3 reasons why we make movies that I like to preach. And one is, do I need to come back? I think I might have skipped it, let's see. Nope, I'll just say it from memory. I know what it is, and then I'll jump into this one. It is, do you want to make movies because you want to make money? You want to have that blockbuster, you want to be the Robert Rodriguez that made your movie for $8,000, though it didn't really happen that way, and it made $300,000, or the producer who, we hear all these stories all over the internet, right? The producer who made Paranormal Activity in their house for $15,000 and it made $580 million. Like, is that who you want to be? Because those, first of all, are totally fictionalized stories. And second of all, again, it's so rare. There's something like 800 scripts every year registered legitly with the WGA, the Writers Guild of America. Legit scripts, right? About 200 of those end up getting produced. The other 600 just get lost in the fray. And those were real, like, somebody wanted to make those, real scripts, right? Out of those 200, how many do we see at Irvine Spectrum? At Sinopolis, maybe 1 or 2 a weekend? And then maybe we see the first 3 or 4 on Hulu, a new thing coming up on Netflix, but what happened to all the rest? Woo! Way down the bottom, cost $250,000 to make, box office return, $25,000. what? How does that even happen? The reality is of the situation of our industry that most movies lose money. So that is not the reason to go into, especially on your first one, because your first one is highly likely to lose money. The next reason is you want to be famous. You know, you want to be the top, female Oscar-winning up there on stage, grabbing that, the producer getting the Oscar for the best picture, for the 5th time, and everybody saying what an awesome comeback and women are now on top. Super cool. Sure, that's a good reason, but again, it shouldn't be your primary driver. For me, what I said got me into it in the first place. I think most people having a voice. I wanted to tell those Air Force stories. I've got tons of them. Airplanes were on fire. Wings, were cracking. Windshields were breaking. People were shooting at me. Caught in typhoons. Running out of fuel over the Pacific Ocean. Seeing unidentified aerial phenomenons at 21 years old with no effing idea what the hell is out there in the world, All these stories I wanted to tell. I wanted to have a voice, and I didn't know where to put them. I found that, somehow in here, I'm going to tell those stories. But when we watch movies that we love, the ones that resonate with us the most, somebody has a voice. They're changing our way of thinking, and I love that films do that. I love when we look back at a lot of these movies, if you look at the ones I have listed on every filmmaker should see on my Letterboxd, those films changed the world. The way we looked at things. The Matrix, as a modern example, it just changed the world. La La Land, for cinematography, completely changed the way we looked at musicals on television. We can look back at individual movies all over the place, but to me, that's the driving force that really, that really makes producing. I talked about the 5 stages of producing, and I'm going to skip over that one. Let me talk a little bit about the actual difference in producers that you asked about all these different producers. Some of the big ones that you'll hear is the producer. The producer is typically the one that goes up on stage and she's up there, I got my Oscar, But behind the scenes, what did the producer do? The producer, her production company was the one that was liable for all of the workers' comps, the insurances, paying the bills, bringing the money in to make the movie. All that liability goes with the producer. The one person's name that's either the head of an LLC, the head of a company, or themselves that is kind of signing all the paperwork. They're the producer. My mom asks me this all the time. You're like, what does a producer do? And the joke answer is, well, producer produces, don't you know? Come on, we produce. And the funny long of that is we do. We produce talent, we produce things, we produce locations, we produce paperwork, we produce a whole bunch of bullshit for an hour. We produce, we pitch, that's what we do, right? Next, executive producer. Executive producer will typically take a lot of the burden off of the producer as far as the paperwork goes, the contracts, all of the, the dealing, the biz of the biz, really. We're dealing with the lawyers, all that kind of aspect is typically an executive producer. Then you'll hear things like co-producer. A co-producer could be, Rima is the co-producer of this workshop tonight. Because she put it all together, she brought me in, she organized it. Therefore, whoever is paying for this, theoretically if somebody was, a gratitude title is often a co-producer. Recently I'm on a production where I'm currently a line producer. They're paying me line producer rate, which is a hell of a lot of money. They don't want to pay me any more to do more work, but they need more work. So they say, well, what if we make you a co-producer of the film? And maybe I will.
So do you get 2 salaries, or do you get one that's just magnified?
Yeah, it depends. The answer is it totally depends.
Okay.
There's no straight answers. It's always
because that I'm sure happens all the time.
I'm sure it does too. People getting double paid, but typically you'll have one swap for the other. You'll be getting a co-producer rate that you've agreed upon, and you're no longer the line producer anymore. You still get that credit, but you're getting paid at a new rate that's negotiated. So that's the other thing too. There's no guidebooks. There's no solid rules. It's all guidelines. There's very few hard, fast rules when it comes to all of this stuff. Because a co-producer very well could be Tom Cruise's agent. Natalie Portman's agent. She brought Natalie Portman to this picture to come in to do our thing, right? So as a part of like a gratuity for that is you're giving a co-producer or an associate producer, what else? A assistant producer. Those type of kind of weird things that you see like scrolling crazy down the credits now. 5 gazillion producers nowadays because everybody's agent is getting a credit, everybody's manager is getting a credit, the location owner is getting a credit. Credits everywhere. So it really dilutes what the term is, except the producer. Never dilute it. It can only be the producer, right? Supervising producer will do more of the work. Maybe they'll actually supervise a team, a VFX team, the second unit team might need to go to Japan, to fly and get some scenes that are going to be added into the movie. So you're not sending your crew over there, but you're sending a second unit over there. And maybe you'll send a supervising producer, a young woman who's going to go over and pay for the hotel bills and make sure everybody's getting fed and make sure that the studios are paid for and that your time is getting scheduled, all of that real work. Oftentimes will be like a supervising team producer. You might have a coordinating producer, which, as you can guess, they coordinate things. They coordinate the efforts of that second unit with the team that's back in Louisiana shooting the actual movie. And maybe this coordinating producer sits in a lone office in LA, in Hollywood, in Burbank, wherever, and she's calling up Japan because of one time zone. She's calling up Louisiana, completely different time zones, and she's juggling all of this work in between. Coordinating producer is often a term that we go there. And then again, my favorite, line producer. I love line producing. You're doing the scheduling, the budgeting, the real on-the-ground coordination, supervising, typically during principal photography. That's the bulk of when that work happens. You're out on the sets actually supervising all that. And then maybe you might move into a different role afterward. You might become a supervising producer in post. You might become a post-production supervisor, all kinds of different things. Any questions on that? There's more. Again, this isn't a class. This is an overview. In my class, were you in my 101 class or my film 3 class? Do you remember?
101?
Or film 2? No, it must have been 101, yeah.
Yeah.
So 101, we kind of glossed over it. Film 2, we really get into these because then the students start figuring out what they want to do. So in my film 2 class that I'm teaching right now, we kind of deep dive into each one of these and we kind of play it out in class to experiment with those roles. Because you really have to do the work, particularly here at film school. So in film school, you're not just being one producer, you're being 20 producers. You're being the location manager, you're being the fundraiser, you're being the permit go-getter, you're being the insurance go-getter. You just have to be advised that here at film school, you're going to have all kinds of different roles that you have to fill. It's just the way it is. You have to be good at pitching. You have to be good at not only to get money or to sell the idea of the script, but to get you to come onto my team. You're so great. This picture is going to massively benefit from you. You're not BSing because you got to build these relationships, right? You'll find that you build relationships and then continue them over a whole career. Steven Spielberg, Lucas, Milius, Ryan Johnston, any of these modern day directors, they have teams of people that they've typically worked with over a career. Who's the woman that did Hurt Locker?
Oh, Bigelow.
Bigelow.
Catherine
Bigelow.
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet that she has teams of people that she's worked with, because when you hand something off to say an editor, you don't want to have to sit there and oversee, over some dude. No, do that. You want to be able to hand it off to somebody else. They're going to do their job, come back around to you. You're going to watch it. You're going to get feedback and move from there. So it's kind of like this symbiotic relationship that's building. What to look for. These are Angelo Ford's, what to look for when you're looking at short scripts. You definitely heard this before. A killer logline for me. When you read a logline and it's like, oh, I can see that movie. I want to watch that movie. I want to go home and watch that right now.
So what do you call a logline versus just the story?
Logline should be one sentence.
One
For
sentence,
me,
okay.
it does a very specific thing. I mean, most people don't have any idea what this means, but in TV Guide, there used to be these like one-line blips
Yep,
of what was the
yep.
movie was about, and they were awesome. Like whoever was writing those back in the day was incredible. For me, there's a little moniker that I took from the Air Force that we used to use, which of course it's like flying, SOAR. Situation, obstacle, action, result. And in the log line, you kind of want to tease the result. A New York cop gets trapped in an LA building that his wife is being held in with terrorists. Dun dun dun. What is that? You know, it's the best Christmas movie ever made, everybody. You know, it's Die Hard. There's tons of different movies that you can do that with, and you don't even, you got that one line, and you want to see the movie. What's it about? What's the action that's going to take place? Who's maybe the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? And kind of a tease of the hook, you
What
know.
was the first, the S?
SOAR. That's situation. What's the situation?
Okay.
And there's tons of, there's literally whole books dedicated to log lines. But that's kind of my little like quick moniker of what I like to tell people.
Okay.
The next one is inciting incident, which I pulled directly from Save the Cat. Which again, one of the, you know, I don't think you necessarily need to be a great writer to be a producer, but I think you need to understand writing. And Save the Cat, to me, I know a lot of writers hate it, but it's a great book for the basic structure of writing. Same thing with Chris Volger's The Writer's Journey. That's this one. The Hero's Journey is an incredible body of work by Joseph Campbell, who studied comparative religion in the early 1900s. He traveled all over the world and studied religion and how we all tell the same kind of stories from like tribe to tribe, you know, all over the world. Ancient stories. People getting swallowed by a whale in South America. The same stories in the Bible with Jonah, you know, like, and they might be told in different ways. Like it might be something else that swallows it, but an animal or a human goes into the depth of something, goes into that afterlife, you know, and goes through this cycle. So he came up with this big like hero's journey cycle, which is fabulous. Dan Harmon has a beautiful take on it. He does videos about it. He's done Community. He does Rick and Morty. There we go, Rick and Morty, right?
Yeah.
Literally Hero's Journey 101. He has his own wheel. You can look up on YouTube, Dan Harmon, something wheel or Journey wheel or something like that. It'll come up if you search like for it. Chris Vogler, he worked for Disney for a long time and saw these same patterns that Joseph Campbell was talking about. He saw them in Disney movies because we all humans, since even what I'm doing right now, I'm doing it. We're sitting around a campfire as I'm telling you a story of a female, warrior that went out into the jungle to get the latest script to write, bring to production. And along the way, she fought many animals and maybe 3, 4, 5 different ones all the way up to the middle of the movie. And at that minute, when it looks like she's going to succeed, the rug is pulled out from under her. It's the rug pull, And then we go on that declining action of the film, down to her lowest point where it looks like she's dead in the woods and is not going to make it out. And there's beasts coming in and their big teeth are dripping and climbing up above her, And then her friend, comes from the village with a long spear that she throws all the way from the other side of the forest, and it goes right through the head of the creature. And then together, side by side, holding each other, they make it back to the campfire to tell this story. We freaking love that as humans. Like, we've been doing it for eons. So it's no wonder that we find it in Star Wars, that we find it in the Never-Ending Story, that we find it in Frozen, that we find it in everything. Hero's Journey is awesome. To me, that structure, sure, you can sell a movie without structure. You can sell a movie, without that journey. But it's probably not going to do well unless you're Quentin Tarantino, and you're a master of switching things up. But then, once you've had the time to reflect and read some more and make your own shit, you realize that Pulp Fiction is just a jumbled hero's journey. It's all there. It's just he's put it in really cool different ways. And Memento is the same thing, just going backwards. And Pulp Fiction, Usual Suspects is the same thing, just being told all over the place, like to make it more convenient for the detective. It's all there. They're masters. When you do see successful non-structural movies, it's because the person doing it is an utter master. Speaking of which, master classes, Alfred Hitchcock. This book is, to me, if I had one like filmmaking book to pick about the actual process, that more on the leaning towards the directing side, but still on the filmmaker side, that's a great Alfred Hitchcock book. So to get back to that long-winded answer, sorry everybody, I know that took a bit, but Inciting Incident, which you can clearly find in Save the Cat, all kinds of other books, the letter comes in the mail that wants the story to go forward. The movie won't go forward unless that item happens. Katniss's sister gets called to go, and then she has to stand up. She can't let her go. The movie doesn't take place unless she stands up and goes in her place, or else it's a totally different movie. So a really good Inciting Incident. I use that one in class, actually. Look up Katniss goes in place of her sister, or whatever that scene is in Hunger Games. Spot on. Beautiful Inciting Incident. Beginning, middle, and end. Movies absolutely have to have a beginning, middle, and end, like we talked about to me. They don't necessarily have to be in that order. It can be end, beginning, middle, but they've got to have it, or else it's not a story. Hitchcock he didn't coin it, but he's known for making it massively popular, this term of MacGuffins. There's an element in the movie that drives the plot forward. So we were referring to Pulp Fiction. We have I don't know if anybody's seen Pulp Fiction. Yeah. We don't know what's in that glowing suitcase, but we know they're all after it. Indy. We don't know that the Germans, what the Ark of the Covenant really looks like, but we know Indy's after it. You know, it's most often when it's used, most recently, the gauntlet with the stones, right? The Infinity Stones.
An end game.
Yeah, in Endgame, right? Clearly a MacGuffin. It's a plot device that drives the story forward. It doesn't have to be a thing. It could be a person. It could be an emotion. But the ones that have a good one to me, super strong. I love a unique message. A movie like In Time. I thought Justin Timberlake was an incredible performance in that. But the story, I was like, wow, this story, we hear it all the time, how time should be more important than money, and boom, there it is on his arm. And it's the whole movie. It's so well done, and it's such a unique way of telling that same story. And then finally, engaging. The scene I like to use for this, if anybody's seen it, is the opening scene from Scream. You know, we see the popcorn, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and the phone call is getting more and more intense, right? It's just like so engrossing. Where I gotta see the rest of this movie. You know, sometimes I did this just recently with Murders in the Building.
Oh yeah.
I started watching it just to see. I'm like, oh, you know, good, great cast. I love the mashup of the three different characters. So we'll give it a little bit. Oh, pause. Well, my wife's not gonna want to. You know, she'll be pissed if I watch this without her. Like, I knew, because it's so engaging and engrossing. It's so fun. It's so well done, and that's a big part of what to look for. All of those. The books I've got here, you can kind of look through them at your own leisure. I've got them in order of development. This one over here, feel free to take pictures of them too if you don't want to like even bother looking at them now. Just snap pictures. And you can find them on my Instagram too. I think there's photos in my feed. What do you want to do in Hollywood? Save the Cat and Writer's Journey, development, writers. If you're not writing it yourself, what to look for when you're finding a script as a producer. Filmmakers and financing, really good one. About how do you get that financing? How do you set up a crowdsourcing event? What are some successful ways that other people have gotten money from people to make movies? Business of the Biz is really great for, again, the specific legalities of it. You know, what is a contract supposed to look like? What did a deal memo look like? You would think that there's like a depository where you could pay somebody, right, and go online and like get deal memos and location agreements, and there's not. Everybody uses their own shit, and like nobody shares it with each other. We're just starting. We had Movie Magic since like the early 80s. That was like the only software we had as an industry. Now you're coming along with things like Studio Binder, which is really incredible, but you pay like a subscription fee. And if I'm going to pay something, I want to put money in front of the camera. I don't want to be paying somebody for, spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Same thing with Set Hero. They give away great, beautiful, like you can download them, the forms, and make your own strip boards and shit like that. It's called Set Hero, and they're super cool. You put in information about your set, your production, and then they give you a rate on adapted instead of like a big, huge like monthly fee. So it is pretty cool, but again, you're still paying money. So finding them out on your own, just building your own, sharing them among your own friends. That's what we do as indie filmmakers.
Where does, I think it's called Rap Book, fit into all this?
Rap book?
Yeah, Rap Book.
I haven't even heard of that one myself. I'm gonna have to look that up.
I'm gonna see if I can find it while we're,
Future self, when you're watching this later, look up Rap Book.
I'm pretty sure that's it. I'm gonna look that right now.
Let me know if it's not. People always ask, this is a shitload of books, right? I mean,
Rap Book.
it is Rap Book.
Yep.
First of all, you can buy them all used. I bought all these used on Amazon, on all kinds of used bookstores. But if you were to buy one, this one by Elliot Grove. Elliot Grove, by the way, started Rain Dance. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like the London version of Sundance. Killer. I've had friends that have had productions there. Shelby, great job with Bombi, by the way. I remember that being there. But Elliot Grove did this really incredible job of putting together a full book. Everything from like the cruise, how it all flows, to like how to do a budget. Literally every step of independent producing is in this book, this one book. So it is a really good one. And then the Filmmaker's Handbook is kind of the same thing, but you can tell it's a little bit more elaborate. They go specifically into like how to set up shots. Here you can see that. How to set up a shot, how to specifically edit L cut versus J cuts, where this is just going to talk more about editing or hiring an editor. We talked about Hitchcock, which is really good, and then the final one, independent film distribution. It is nearly impossible to distribute something on your own unless you have huge amounts of money or huge connections. It's the way it is. There used to be this one thing called the Stripper, but they ripped off a whole bunch of filmmakers. It was a great, awesome thing that could have been fabulous for all of us on the independent side. But again, always gets screwed up by somebody just being greedy, so that got destroyed. There are things for your small productions now, like if you go to Watch Alter or Watch Dust, I think it is, .com. One does horror, one does sci-fi. They specifically specialize in short films of those types. Watch Alter and Watch Dust. Alter, yep. You have to put Watch in front of it. I guess they couldn't get the names or something. And then, of course, Shudder is another really good, smaller aggregate type of thing where you might be able to do some distribution. But, really great book to learn more about that in there. So those are like the books that I recommend. On a film set, you've got that line producer that's kind of managing everything, that's reporting maybe up to a producer and up and over to an executive producer. But that line producer is managing the entire crew, making sure that the teams are getting everything they need, making sure that the dailies that are being captured by the director and the camera team are actually getting over to the executives who can watch them. Just kind of greasing all of those wheels with all of the teams on set. And again, always safety being paramount. They're managing all of those assets, the props, the wardrobes, any of the hardware, the software, all of that kind of production assets are all being overseen, not used, but overseen and managed by that line producer. And then the production itself, they're making sure that you're staying on schedule. They're looking at that daily shot list and seeing if it's actually doable onto the actual strip boards that the first ADs have created. They can understand that language. When I'm saying these words, a strip board, the producer needs to be able to understand, when the first AD says we need to slip this, that off the strip board, or move that. You need to be intimately familiar on how to do that, because it applies directly into a budget. You can't build a budget unless you have a schedule. So you break down a script with the first AD. You'll break down all the scenes. You'll define all the elements. You use software maybe either manually, or you'll use Movie Magic or Studio Binder. And then together, the line producer and the first AD will own that schedule, that budget, all of the ensuring that it's actually being met. The shot list, and of course staying legal. That they're following, if it's DJ or, the the Directors Guild or IATSE or all these different, alphabet unions that are out there, that all of their rules that are applicable to that set are being followed. The time that people are on set, that they're leaving properly, that they're getting proper crew rest between the next day, directly applicable to the first AD who's working with the line producer, and then the line producer is communicating all of that. So it's kind of, again, you're guiding the guarding of the script is that same concept in that production. I, particularly in a student environment or in a small indie environment, if you don't have big like studio type of money, I will build a Google Drive, and then I'll put everything in that Google Drive. And I actually have folders, all kinds of folders, like specifically for development, pre-production, and then you can click on pre-production, and there's locations and all of that. I just build a shell, and then I go on my computer and I copy and paste an empty shell every time I make a new production. You can't do it like in Google, but if you authorize Google to be like a drive on your computer, super handy to be able to do.
Will you show me how to do that?
Yeah, I could show you that after too. It's easy, but really handy.
Okay.
Because then you're not just going to google.com and trying to like move stuff into the folders. You can go into the actual architecture of your computer and click on the Google Drive and then say copy paste, and it makes a folder, and everything that's in that folder just copies and pastes.
Okay, so just have a template basically,
Yeah.
and then you make, every time you have a new production, then you
Yeah.
just start with a fresh.
That's exactly what I do. Yep.
Okay.
Because the whole point is that you're distributing the data, particularly the strip board. That's one of the key elements that to learn more about is the strip board. That's the actual strips we've done in class for sure. When you have an actual schedule, it's on the old school. They literally had strips like hanging on a cork board that they would move all around. Now it's in the program. That's feeding into your budget. I do highly recommend Movie Magic Budget. That's what's actually got me most of the jobs that I've ever been paid for was because I knew how to use Movie Magic. They hired me, even the big one, even the big $25 million, feature. They hired me specifically because their investor wanted to see a studio Movie Magic format budget, and none of them knew how to do it. So they hired me. I took their script. I did a breakdown on it. I gave them a full breakdown of the strips, and then I gave them a full actual line-by-line Hollywood-style Movie Magic budget. Movie Magic's awesome because everything's already in there. You're opening up a Fox template or whatever one you like, a Warner Brothers template, and then you're just filling in the ones that you want. And you're saying, hide everything else I didn't fill in. And there's your beautiful like Hollywood budget. Rubber stamp. Boom, here's your money, go make the movie.
Yeah, and may I say something? By the way, we have Movie Magic and Movie Budget.
Yep. Yeah, excellent point.
In college. I think that we have class specifically for production.
We do. We specifically have a production management class, which Gary, I believe, absolutely wonderful class. I highly recommend it. If you are interested in being production management, line producing, mandatory. Everybody else, nice to know, good understanding of it, but it's super important. And then, for these smaller productions, sorry, one second. For these smaller productions, like, these small student productions we're doing, or we're all getting together and making a movie, you don't have to do something like that. You can get together, and I just made one a few weeks ago for a friend of mine. I basically, created a template of a Movie Magic budget in Google Sheets or in Excel. I mean, you can make your own. Whoever's using the data, that's one thing. But if you're like trying to get money from a big Hollywood studio or something, you're going to want a nice, pretty, like, oh, this looks like a budget I've seen before, not some spreadsheet. But it is possible. The big buckets to think about that we are really, the realms that we deal with are low budget, of course. When we're talking about low budget, that's like $1 million and below. It could be micro budget in there, which is typically less than 500. But again, there's no definition of any of these. And then next jump up from there, you'll see 25 million. That's kind of like the minimum of a like real Hollywood movie, because 1 or 2 stars, and there's your budget. The first, not Jack Reacher, what's the Keanu Reeves movie that he did? Anybody know?
Not the John Wick.
John Wick, yeah. The
But-
first John Wick, he was like super cool about it. He really wanted to get that made. I'm reading his comic, by the way, right now. He's got a graphic novel called Berserker. That's freaking awesome. You know, he did that first movie on very little to no pay. So the movie the budget ended up being somewhere around $25 million. It literally would have been double that, 50 million easily if he had just taken pay. So if you could have a $1 million movie, you add Keanu Reeves, it's now a $25 million movie. You add Keanu Reeves and a bad guy to fight against, and now it's a $50 movie. You add a few more fun people in there, and now you're at what? 150 million, which is a Hollywood blockbuster. They know if they put 4 big stars in a movie and it's a good Marvel or pre-sold teen fantasy movie, they know they're going to make their money back. So you get into 1 million, you really get like micro, 500 and below, million, below, low budget, and then what do we call it? Like up to Hollywood budget, which is like 25 million to 150 million. And then the blockbuster, you know, the Avatars, $500 million to make.
Wow.
To make.
Which
How
lost
much did it
against
make?
Catherine Bigelow
Did
to
it?
Hurt Locker.
Oh, it's a Hurt Locker?
Yeah, they were both up for the award.
Oh,
Director
yeah.
award, and she took it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
For the Hurt Locker.
for Hurt Locker.
Yeah, incredible. So, you know, that's what you're thinking about though too. You're thinking about these on the front end. These are our decisions. You know, are we going for awards, or are we going for, you know, commercial success? Because a lot of times they're not even remotely on the same scale with each other. So those blockbusters are really everything that you're seeing today. All these big budget movies. So a lot of people ask, you know, where does that leave us? There's some great examples. When I say no budget, which is a lot of what we're doing, 25,000 and below. The most I've ever done for a short film, by the way, was like $34,999.99 because the SAG limit is 35,000. So I've done some big, like high dollar short films, so it's not unheard of. Typically, they'll be about $5,000. If you're going to do a really good short from here out on your own with some friends, it would probably be about $5,000 in real money. Up to 25. There's a movie called One Cut of the Dead. It's this Japanese subtitled movie where they're filming like documentary style about a zombie apocalypse that doesn't, like fake zombie apocalypse. And then of course what happens? A real zombie apocalypse. Whoa, right? It did awesome. People love it. It's like a cult favorite. It's been a huge success globally. So it's a really good one. Even if again I don't like horror, it's the best place to start.
Yeah.
Because you know, this one, zombie movie. I don't really dig zombie movies, but check out that title there, One Cut of the Dead. Micro budget, something that launched career massively with Ryan Johnston with Brick right here in San Clemente. Brick was a small, low budget movie, about $500,000, low budget, right? But did incredibly well at the film festivals. People were immediately like, this Ryan Johnston character is going places. Did Looper next, did Star Wars,
Oh, wow.
did I loved it. What's the Clue one? Knives Out.
And
now, massive success.
Daniel Craig.
Yeah, he
He
was
get
the
$100 million for that.
yeah he was the star. He was the lead of that, and now they've just
I
signed
just was reading that. Yeah.
something like 400 million. Netflix has committed. I don't know. Somebody can look it up. It's like 400 million for 2 or 3 of them
Wow.
that they're fronting the money to go make. So I love Knives Out. It's the perfect fit for Ryan Johnston to me. And then low budget. Oh, go ahead.
One Cut of the Dead. How much did you say that was for?
25K.
25. Okay.
Yep, 25K. And so right up now to jump all the way up to 1 million, which to me, like, who would do that? This was something like Blue Valentine.
Okay.
Ryan Gosling is the lead, and he's no way taking a salary at $1 million. He's doing it as a favor. He wants to get, you know, attraction, and you see tons of movies that fall into that place. That they're what I like to call very high quality drama, but you only pull them off. Fruitvale Station, you know, they all fall into this category. Blue Valentine, they are incredibly well acted, directed. You know, really, they're total pro filmmakers, stretching that dollar to highest production value, and then that's what somebody in a studio is like, we want that person, we want that person, we want that person in. So it's great if you can get it. If Sandra Bullock is your cousin, and she's going to be in your Gravity movie for you for nothing, for $85 million in back end.
Wow.
But it's a hard pull off. Let's see. So, what to do? I kind of tapped on it a little bit. Extreme horror is a great one. Documentaries are great. Religious is great if you're of a particular faith. It's a built-in audience. A lot of times churches will show it for you if you have a good relationship in that, in that realm. So, by all means, produce something specifically to a target. It doesn't necessarily have to be either just religious, but it could be something else that you have a strong connection in or somebody's willing to pay for. I see these all the time. My daughter loves, I don't know if she's watching, but she loves horse movies.
Yeah.
And she keeps finding all these horse movies. Like, she searches on Netflix for them. And I'm like, geez, this movie feels like awful, like it's a kind of message underlying here. And I'll look it up, and sure enough, some pastor has paid for it out of pocket, or some church raised the money for it. And it's not a direct out, like, all flat out religious movie, but there's certainly undertones that somebody, it's got the message, and somebody wanted it there. Right? And then, of course, those very high quality dramas. You cannot be successful on a film set without leadership. And it doesn't. You have to come to things like this. You have to reach out to other women. You have to be the one to put together. Rima over here is, to me, an incredible leader. She's constantly like putting things together. Pushing people forward, getting us all into a room, having workshops. That's what leadership is to me. It's leading by example. It's not something that you have to literally be some like, charging up on the hill leader. Leader to me is somebody that is doing what we're talking about right now by example and is able to collaborate and bring all that in. Of course, that goes beyond that too. I love SMART goals, which was another from my MBA days. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. You shouldn't make a goal unless it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. I get confused a lot on realistic and attainable. Isn't that the same thing? And a friend of mine explained it to me one time. Said, Angelo, it's attainable for you to become the president of the United States. It's fully attainable. You meet all the qualifications now. It's not very realistic. So that's kind of, to me, solidified it in my brain. That's a super easy answer what the difference between those two are. But timely, you all could not be more timely right now. There has never been a time in entertainment when women are not only like being included in the conversation, but literally being like celebrated to be in the conversation. Our director was a female. Our producer was the first female to do this. And we have some of those females here. Kiku was one of them. She's awesome. I had one, Rose, up at Chapman when I was doing my MFA there. She was one of like the first, same thing, one of the first female producers in Hollywood. She did Overboard, I believe. The old awesome movie, right?
Great movie.
But so be collaborative, set those SMART goals, and be the leader. You can't succeed without it. A big part of that too is identifying trends. Right now, like I just said, females are being celebrated. Not only that, there's this huge shift. I teach cross-cultural cinema is another one of the classes I teach here, and we look at all the different demographics and how we're been affected by stereotypes in cinema all throughout Hollywood. And one we just literally did this week, the timeliness of it, right, is great. We watched Thelma and Louise, and you watch Thelma and Louise, and it doesn't have what we call the male gaze. It has bits of it in there. It's still, it was starting to make its way out at that time. Still there. But overall, the movie's incredible, And we're definitely seeing that now. We're seeing movies where the female isn't just leading the male astray off of his goal, to get the MacGuffin, right?
Yeah.
The female is exactly. We're seeing Rey now, right? Unheard of to have a Rey character in Star Wars.
And all the guys are pissed about
Yeah.
it.
Of course, right?
Disneyland.
Of course. But that's the way it is, and it is changing, and we're seeing it for the better, and it's going to continue better when it's not just like a female actor lead, but it's a director, a female director behind the camera, and a female producer
Yeah.
And she's not
Wonder
stereotypically kicking guys in the nuts and like smashing them in the face, and she's doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's celebrating her femininity. And, you know, as an Air Force pilot, I can tell you firsthand, the female pilots that I flew with were incredibly better at multitasking than men. We're, ooh, monkey's lucky if I can press the button, right? Like, I can't make airplane go down. Make airplane slow down, throttle slow down, make airplane go forward, you know, stick forward. Women are incredibly better at stick, throttle, button, you know, fuel transfer. This is reach 59. We are climbing to 9,000 feet, turning left, heading 270. And meanwhile, I'm like, oh! So celebrating that, showing that in stories, you know, female fighter pilots, you know, in stories, and showing them why they're achieving these things that the men aren't, and all those kinds of different ways. And then you're celebrating it in a bigger way. You're not just like pushing it on to everybody. And it truly is encompassing at that point. It's not just a female lead. Oh, make a female lead James Bond, you know. And he's getting all kinds of shit for this, Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig says, no, don't make James Bond a female. Make a role that's better than James Bond. And, you know, 008 is the female. Whatever it is. That's a crappy idea, by the way. But that's what he's trying to say. It's not coming out the proper way. You know, it's very clear.
Not the proper
Reinvent the
way.
wheel as
The
opposed
headlines
to-
just
Yeah.
written.
No, because that's what the male gaze producer is going to want to do. The male producer will say, okay, make, you know, boop, boop, pop in a female, keep James Bond going.
Push the button,
Push the button, monkey,
Push the
right?
button now.
Yeah. So identifying these trends, whether it's the gazes or the different kind of movies that are, you know, westerns are decreasing, but, you know, this is going up, and identifying all that and coming up with new trends and really being a trendsetter is a huge portion of being a leader female producer. All kinds of new stuff on the horizon to think about there. Have anybody seen the latest AI Netflix? Look up on, when you go home, Netflix AI horror movie. Netflix had
Is that what it's called?
something like that. You'll find it. It's on Netflix's.
I'm looking it up. I don't know.
Yeah, you can look it up.
I don't have patience.
Netflix showed like hundreds of thousands of hours of horror movies to an AI bot, and then it wrote its own movie.
Oh,
It is
I've seen this.
ridiculously
I've
bad.
seen it. It's so bad.
It's so bad, but
Oh.
it's ridiculously funny.
Yeah.
But
Austin showed it in
but
class.
that's today. That's today. You know,
Yeah.
short now in the future, identifying that trends and being a part of a first AI written movie
Yeah.
that a human is actually saying, okay, that's stupid, but I'm going to change this and change that.
Right.
Super fun that then it's the first collab between a female and a computer. You know, nobody's ever done that before, and it's a super cool thing. So identifying those trends and really guiding them. You want to benchmark across the internet, but still find your own style. A big thing I want to push on before I go too long, I got it coming up on my hour. I think I'm a little bit over my hour actually, so I'll just keep going a little bit faster here. One of the big things is insurance. Huge, 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 especially now here at school. And when we're talking about insurance, you got to make sure that you have a few different things. One is workers' compensation. It's different from state to state, so you have to look it up and all this. Every state kind of defines what an employee is differently. But I can tell you here in California from personal legal expense that pretty much if Rima told me to be here at a certain time, I could be considered an employee. You know, depend if the right lawyer had the right information in their hands.
Isn't it like if there's a set time and location?
Pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much
Two
California.
things, and then
Which essentially is anything anybody could then could be.
like
All
go
of us
get
could be.
lunch.
It's crazily, right? It's
Even if
crazy.
you're not getting paid.
Even if you're not getting paid. Doesn't matter if it's your sister, your brother, you have a fallout with your brother and then he sues you. You have to look at the laws of individual state to see what the definition of an employee is. And then if you bring anybody onto your set as an employee, whether it's a makeup person, an actor, first of all, you can't bring SAG actors on unless you have workers' comp. 100% it's in their clause. Micro budget is a little wishy until somebody sues, but I guarantee it's going to change too. I have no doubt that they'll solidify micro too. They're trying to make micro more small budget friendly, but you have to have workers' comp if you have people working on your sets. You know, I can tell you all three of these insurances that I'm going to go through, the big ones, you can get them for about $1,800 from local, like we just got them for a class here that just did an external project, and it was about $1,800, I think.
Was that for a single?
No, for all three. It was for workers' comp,
Yeah.
general liability, and equipment insurance, which are the big three buttons.
Okay.
My mom
Not
sells
vehicle.
insurance.
Huh?
My mom sells insurance.
Yeah, so this is a good point. This happens all the time. You specifically want entertainment insurance because you can get it through other things, but when you call up somebody, my friend that does it too, hey, I need a COI for, renting some jibs from, this place in Hollywood. Oh, what's the COI, dude? I can get you that. Oh, I know what a COI is. I've done those before. I can get you tomorrow. No, I need it right now. I need entertainment websites. I can go on, say the name of the company, and literally show them, here's the COI. If I'm at renting from Rima and she says, no, you can't, Angelo, you can't take my cameras until you give me a COI. Hopefully I'd printed it out ahead of time and I brought it with me, but I probably didn't because I'm a dummy, male, female, fat fingering all the required buttons, producer. So it is important, I found, to have an entertainment insurance. There's Film Emporium, there's all kinds of them that are reasonably priced you can search for, but Scott is a great resource. Scott has some great connections, and he got really good insurance for the programs we just did.
So for something that is like beyond ultra micro, and you go to one of these web pages like Event Helper, and
Yep.
you pay $275 for 52 days worth because you want to cover your
Great
back
point.
end.
Yeah.
And it's just general liability because you're not hiring anybody, you're just bringing
No, this is a
friends
great
on.
point. If you have a film production company, you can get what's called a DICE policy.
If you're,
DICE.
if you're doing a bunch of them.
Yeah, but if you're
just
doing one single production, like I just did one with Professor Hoskins a month ago,
Yeah.
we got insurance for 12 days.
Okay.
And it was something
And
like...
those are okay companies to go through like
Oh,
Event Helper,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
good.
what you
Good,
want,
good, good.
That's what you're going to get the best rate on.
Yeah.
Unless you're a production company, you have an LLC, you're going to get a 1 year, then you're going to call them up and say, hey, I'm a small production company, I've got 2 employees. Typically on a set we'll have 25 people. We're going to do 10 productions in the course of the next 12 months. Can I get a quote? They might ask you a few more questions, you have to fill out a questionnaire,
Yeah.
and then they send you back an annual policy. I did get a quote on one of those recently. It was like $6,000 to do like 10 pictures.
If you did that with your school, then all the productions that are being made could actually
Correct.
dive in and just pay for that portion of it.
Correct.
It'd be a lot cheaper.
It would be a lot cheaper. It would be a very bright thing to do for
Yeah.
somebody. But
Yeah.
there's obviously liability that goes along with that, because if you do get sued, you're the person getting
You're the
sued.
one.
And I've been sued, and it's terrible. So general liability, equipment insurance. The difference is workers' comp is in case somebody on your set that works for you gets hurt. General liability is in case some stranger walking down the street trips over your stinger, and falls into your area and knocks over the red and trips Rima, and the big, oh geez, this is gonna be expensive, right? That's that's the differentiator. It's for other people that don't work for you that might get hurt. And then equipment insurance is obviously specifically for the equipment. A big takeaway with our kind of stuff is never leave equipment in your car. Because a lot of times there's clauses in the insurance policies that you leave it in your car and somebody breaks in and steals it, it's not covered. Always, put it in your at least in your garage, closed, and then you're safe.
What about vehicles?
Yeah, you can it's usually an addition. So that's my next point, actually. Thank you for the lead-in.
In your vehicle.
The lead-in is special coverage. You might need special coverage for vehicles if you're doing like Rima was going to do on traffic. She wanted to look into pulling a process trailer.
Right.
That's a whole nother coverage rider that you have to add to the policy.
Okay, so if you have a vehicle in your story, not necessarily you're driving a truck.
It should be covered by your insurance because you should have car insurance for it.
Right.
Depends on the legality of how it's written. If you're using it in a movie, blah blah blah, you have to check with your insurance company is the answer, and then just always check with the I find it's always better to ask. The whole concept, like in the military, we were flying as a pilot, we had this idea of it's better to beg for forgiveness than it is ask permission. That doesn't fly for me as a producer. I think it's going to get you in way more trouble than it. Yeah, sure, you might be able to go get that shot. Rima might be able to drive down 405 with 2 young girls in the back on a trailer, but far more potential to trouble than it does the good. So,
Yeah.
special coverage. Other things that might fall into special coverage: pyro. You might be doing an explosion. You might have children. You might want extra coverage for the children on set. There's all kinds of reasons that you might need special coverage.
Children and fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
children and fire are the big
Oh, boy.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, animals is another one. Yep, great, another great one. Errors and omissions isn't such a big deal in our small stuff. But when you go out into the world to sell something, anybody that's going to buy it is going to want an errors and omissions report that's basically going through and, you know, they're making sure there's no copyrights. That company is looking for copyrights. They're looking for trademarks. They're looking for infringement. They're looking for everything you can think of. And if the movie's cleared, they're giving you insurance that says if you sell this to me and I get sued because there's a giant Coke can sitting here or something stupid, they're going to cover that. It's been done. This is a huge point right now with that new Korean Netflix thing.
Squid Game.
Squid Games. Some dude's phone number is in there. And people have been calling, thousands and thousands of people have been calling him. And now he wants 50 grand from Netflix.
8675.
That's exactly what I told my wife.
Yep.
It's exactly the same thing.
Same
Somebody should have caught that during errors and omission.
Where was the phone number? I didn't see
It's
it.
literally on his business card in the show.
Yeah.
Yep. So somebody should have caught it. They didn't for whatever reason. Hopefully there's errors and omission. That insurance, like somebody got insurance and they missed it, because if there's not, Netflix will end up paying that guy. So keep an eye on that and see what happens.
Yeah.
Permits is another big issue. Obviously, state, country, county, city, and special. You might need a special permit to do things. Always just check. And if somebody, like I did one here recently on Riverside, and the lady said, "Oh no, we don't. We're not covered by any film commission or anything. You don't need anything out here." I said, "Can you send me an email that says that?" She sent it to me. I print that out. I put that in my producer binder.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
smart.
So and so
Have it
sent
in
that.
writing.
Yeah, just
As
in
long as you
case.
get it in writing.
Because sure enough, we did have, when we were filming out there, we had police officers come by and said, "You have permission to film here?" I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "We don't need a permit." She's okay. No problem. Keep it safe. Drove on. You're a lot of times the location scout in here as the producer in college, and then out there, same thing. That is another whole realm of potentially producing, like finding and bringing a great location to a picture. Randy's like dogs. One location, the whole movie was able to shot there. So finding a great location could easily be like a producing title to me, if it's a really good one for the picture. You're really looking at two things. You're looking at the story, and you're looking at the technical. Do you have the ability to plug electrics in? Is it just a blank square that you can't plug anything in? And then does it fit for the story? Those are, to me, the two big things. Always look for, air traffic control, the surrounding. Is there a school right there? I filmed one time out at a train museum in Paris. Incredible, like beautiful 1918 steam trains, and looks great. All you could hear on the recording is children running around because there's like a little schoolhouse, like right daycare thing, literally right next door. So we had to reshoot all of our sound differently, in ADR post. Obviously check the weather, check the surroundings, lock the location. You get a location agreement is another term, another form. There should be a repository for all this stuff. Studio Binder's starting to make one. Location agreements are a big part of your producing binder. And just caring for that, making sure that, again, you're the leader of the set. Take care of it, make sure you turn it over the way that it was when you got it, don't break things. You want to be welcomed back. Pitching. When you're pitching, you want to keep it succinct, you want to, be illustrative if you can, and then you want to, be prepared to take questions. Really try to engage when you're pitching to somebody, and then try to see if you can rework that into the story, on hand. It's really more likely to get things sold. But always have a pitch and a hook at the end, Be sure to go to my Instagram to read more about all of this. Plenty of books on there and links, blah, 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 Fundraising is obviously a huge, there's no way to cover fundraising. It doesn't sound like you're all that interested in fundraising.
Oh, I am.
But
Definitely.
you are?
Oh, yeah.
So the big things to think about with fundraising are two budgets. Your bare bone budgets, and then what do we need to actually make this the way we want it budget. And then you can have a gazillion budgets in between, save as, and then just kind of play around with them. But that's where I start. And then, when I'm looking for seed funds, I literally just did this on the way here, sell stuff. I have a bike in my garage that just sits there. I sold it for $1,000. It's, it's a beautiful, great mountain bike that now some guy is riding with his daughter because he has the same one and they wanted to be able to ride, these nice mountain bikes together. Super fun, great, happiness into the world. It gave me another $1,000 in my pocket that now I can put towards my son, who wants the seed money. Otherwise, I would be putting it in my seed bank, right? A second job. You hate to hear it, but that's part of the reality. If you need seed money and you really want to make a movie, get another job. You know, if you can't find any more shit to sell, go find more ways to increase that revenue stream. And then, of course, friends and family. I find the best friends and family application is one, Patreon. If you don't already have a Patreon page, create a Patreon page. It's just like being an artist, you know, in the Renaissance days where they got money from patrons to actually do art. We're all filmmakers, that's art. If you create a Patreon page, it's a place for your friends, your family, when they do have something, you give them a little perk or something, you know. It's kind of like crowdsourcing, but just ongoing forever.
Now, if I remember right, you mentioned that yours is ongoing. I'm trying to remember. You build.
So
you
mine,
build something.
I build models, scale
That's right.
models, and then I tell stories. I've owned like crazy cool cars, like 20 Trans Ams, like all these knucklehead muscle cars from the 80s, you know.
Right. So you're
Shit.
just continuous.
Of course,
But
forever.
For a film.
I literally haven't done that, and if anybody's watching, there's more episodes coming soon. I haven't made an episode in like 6 months, but people are still paying me $250 a month. People that have subscribed, they don't,
Okay.
because a lot of times they're my uncle, they're a friend, you know, and they like seeing that content and they like feeling those special extra perks, you know, and I do. I really give them something in return. I write a journal entry or something when I do it, you know, special that
Right.
only they can see.
So if it's a one-time shot, though, a one film.
No.
Patreon, is that-
You can do Patreon forever.
So you just do your one film and you just let it
Patreon is
sit
for
there.
me. It's
Okay.
not for a
It's
film.
not you as okay. There's
Right.
there's my.
So you
mix
get
up.
the difference now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the differentiator that I think you hit on. A lot of people hit that. Oh, why would I, you know, I'm just going to do it once. No, do it for yourself. Do it for Angelo Ford. I'm kind of even remorphing mine right now into Angelo Ford, the educator, because I'm not really like doing web series anymore. So maybe people want to buy this kind of stuff on my Patreon page. They can watch this for $5,
Okay.
you know, and then have their own like economy masterclass, not so masterclass with Angelo Ford. If we all wanted to do a small short together here, we would need some money for pizzas and drinks and like, you know, paper to print scripts on, that kind of stuff. It's not a lot of money,
Yeah.
but because then what you're doing is channeling it over to what she hit on. You're doing a GoFundMe, an Indiegogo, a Kickstarter, a Seed and Spark. You're possibly getting grants. Her thing with trafficking, I really think if she had somebody that understood grants on her team, they would be able to be calling all kinds of different agencies to get grant money for this picture to get even distributed, you know, out there into the world. So grant money is huge. Obviously investors, if you can find somebody, like to me, crowdsourcing, you know, you can find somebody, give away an executive producing credit for $500. I've paid for that before. When I was applying to Chapman, I didn't have many producing credits. So I paid like $250 3 times on separate projects just to get executive producer on my resume to put into Chapman for my, you know, my acceptance. There's plenty of people that are in that situation that possibly want to do that. In-kind deals, you know, let me go to this actually. In kind, I've raised a total of $1.1 million in-kind things that I've done over my producing career. Whether it's you're making some social media videos for a local church in Laguna Beach. You're making some business videos that they can put out into, you know, late night cable for a coffee shop in Fullerton. You're working on an actual studio ranch. You trade executive producer credit to the executive owner, and he gives you some money on the back end of your production instead of on the front end. So instead of paying him the going rate, if you paid full rate, $10,000 a day for whatever, let's call it 40 days, $400,000.
Wow.
Make me an executive producer. I've never been a producer. People just come and shoot here. Nobody's offered to make me ever a producer. I want to be a producer on film, and I want to be a part of it. Then include that location owner in your nightly meetings. Have a drink with them, smoke a cigar with them at night. The whole deal. Make them really like hang out and be a part of the production crew. All of that money onto the back end. Like just, so in kind is amazing, the kind of things you can do. You're basically trading your skills or your assets of a title with somebody else who has something that you want, a location, a really cool car, an actor, whatever it may be. And it could just be swapping a title. You're giving them a co-producer credit. You're giving them an executive producer credit. But typically, the ones I found the best, local environment stuff, you'll find people in your circles, mom, dads, their uncle has a shop, and he learns that you're willing to make a thing for his business or her business, and you make some short videos, and the next thing you know, you're using this beautiful warehouse as like the center of your story, your kidnapping story, and you didn't pay a dime for it. In kind is massively. I could literally write a book on in kind. A whole at least a chapter in
I'd
the
love
book.
it if we can dive into that more
Yeah.
another time.
We do in my
like,
class. We literally
do part 2.
we go through it exercises in. I don't, have you already
Which
taken
class?
101?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do it in my 101.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no.
But in kind, again, you can look much more about it though.
Yeah.
I mean, you look up in kind production swaps, or you'll find all kinds of articles about it online. Have checklists. I have checklists for everything. Literally pre-production, production. Before I go into that stage of any one of these, I go through my checklist. You can get them on Studio Binder. Super easy. Just look them up. Reputable sources will have them. Nowadays, there's so many freaking cool apps. 2 that I extremely recommend is Filmic Pro. Literally turns your iPhone into a cinema camera.
Oh.
Everything that you're looking for when you're filming, puts it right there on the screen. You can change every single setting, like bing, 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 bing. Filmic Pro. And then another one is CAD Rage. CAD Rage, CADRAGE, CAD Rage. This one is incredible because you can take location photos with it. You can change the camera to exactly what kind of camera you're using. And then you can change the lenses. I can just sit here and tap 25, 35, 45 and take pictures of each different lens.
So it's like Artemis.
It's literally a cheaper version of Artemis, yeah.
Okay.
Does this? If you've seen Artemis, it's the same thing. Artemis is the pro version of it that people literally have won Emmys with. It is the same thing, works incredible.
Like that, and you just kind of go through and you choose your camera. And
Yep,
lenses
they're
and
awesome.
stuff.
Instagram job for having that. I love it seeing people because they're awesome.
Yeah.
I
it's-
actually I just bought Garage because I saw it on your Instagram or
Yeah,
somewhere.
works
I
so
just-
good. It's so fun too. Yeah, those pictures I posted, I
Yeah.
used CAD Rage. It tells you the location,
Yeah.
the direction you're facing, the angle you're positioned. It's just great pre-production material. Then you get into the back end, and of course you're the one having to market. Your film, and you're going to do that by all the social media channels, having your own website for it, going to film festivals. That going is the key part. They're kind of not worth it to me right now, unless they're small and you can just submit for low fee. But when you go to a film festival and it's people in the same room and you're talking and you're swapping cards, and it's just such a great experience. Film markets are the same way. Plus, you're watching actual movies, and again, you're seeing the trends. You're getting a feeling of these kind of indie movies that are getting made. But hanging out and really participating is the only way to really expand outside of your local set.
How do you feel about marketing ahead of time?
It depends because it depends on the size of the production is the biggest part. Because if you get picked up by a distribution company, they're going to want to do everything the way they want it, and probably give you a bill for it. But if you're doing a small production that you're going to go to Newport with, or you're going to go to Palm Springs with, sure, I would highly recommend doing some marketing on your own.
Ahead of time.
Specifically through social media, targeted at that location where you're going to the film festival. So if I'm going to have a movie that's going to premiere in, say, Cannes, I'm going to, France, which I did. I had a film there. It did really well. I wish I went. I didn't go.
Oh, no.
What I should have done, though, I know, I was just not caring at film at the time. It was like 5 years ago. But I should have went and put ads on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of the major social media programs for at least the week where I was going in that location as where I want people targeted. So the people that are out in bars are seeing my movie, they're thinking about my movie. When I go meet somebody and I say that's mine, oh, I saw that on Facebook, Even if you're not necessarily, they're not seeing the screening, maybe they want to go hang out at the bar and, watch it on your laptop or something. So I do believe in that. For the smaller things.
Right.
If you're going to Alter or Dust or Shutter, maybe not. I don't know. It's a maybe. If you get like Randy gets picked up by a distributor, I definitely wouldn't do much on my own. You know, I would put the money into their power because they probably have better channels to put it in. You know, get it in front of people's eyeballs. And the other side to that are markets. I do highly believe in going to markets too, having an EPK, an electronic press kit. If you can go to something like the American Film Market that is up in Venice every year, I've met some incredible people in there by accidentally like hanging out by the pool and not buying a $250 ticket. But I'm just saying, going to these things is the key. Walking around, meeting people, asking questions. Oh, how many movies are in this packet? What kind of movies are you looking for this kind of putting together this kind of film list that you're building? Whatever it is that you have a question on. Go around and meet people and ask. All right, that takes us to my last one, which is you're managing all these obstacles. There's so many different things that are changing. My big proponent of is I've always this is kind of an adaptation of the Marine Corps. My dad was a Marine. My dad is a Marine. Sorry if you're watching. 85-year-old Marine. Never changes. But it's adapt, overcome, evolve. So in the Marines they say adapt, overcome, survive. But I think in the Air Force we can do a little bit better. So we can evolve. So the next time that this happens, we're a bit evolved as an individual, as a producer, as humans. We've learned our lesson from the first time. So adapt to the situation, whatever that obstacle is. Emergency or just a critical something per day or anything that gets in your way, and then find ways to adapt to that. Don't just try to go around it. Find ways to actually integrate it. You can. Another just quick side off from business was the DMAIC process. In business, in engineering, they look at defining, measuring, improving, analyzing, and controlling a situation in this type of situation, when there's a problem. And I think that is, if you ever really wanted to deep dive in, that to me is the best. Defining the problem first, and measuring it, analyzing it, improving it, and then controlling it so that that problem then becomes an actual asset. But again, that's in that center. That's called DMAIC. You can look that up easily. To evolve. If you're going to fail, don't have these long, drawn-out failures of 20 years, and then then it's over. Fail fast, move on. Fail fast, move on. Learn from the failure, move on. Not a fan. I think this is one of the things that makes America so different than everywhere else in the world. You see these executives or these people that are gazillionaires, they're not afraid to fail. They're the ones that truly fail, hold on to a project too long, and then they give up, and then they're so demoralized that they never move forward. To end where I started, I truly believe that filmmaking is perseverance of attrition. The people that are able to persevere, that are able to adapt, overcome, and evolve are the ones that ultimately become successful.
Yay!